Yo, welcome to the Gig Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Taylor. My guest today is Michael Paynter, singer, songwriter, producer, and multi-instrumentalist with a voice you've heard everywhere, even if you don't know it. From touring with Jimmy Barnes, ICEHOUSE, and the Veronicas, to that viral Jesus Christ Superstar performance that blew everyone away. We talk about the long game of music, session life, solo careers, theatre, and what it really takes to stay consistent over the decades. This is episode 170. Michael Paynter. Here we go. I think we're rolling. Michael Paynter, how are you, man?
Good, mate. Good to be here. Hope you're well.
I'm doing all right. It's a hectic time of year, that's for sure. So, you've been busy, man. It's so it's the 19th of December today. When people are listening to this, it'll be January. So anyway, we can sort of roll back the last sort of little while for you. Yeah, you've had a bit going on. You've had the Jimmy tour, and you've just recently announced your solo tour that you're doing next year. So maybe introduce that a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit about later on in the chat. That's cool.
It's called the Great Australian Songbook, mate. So it's just me deciding to get on a plane and head out to some venues around the country, which I haven't done for 15 years. And just sort of celebrate the greatest Aussie songs ever, and especially the ones that sort of meant the most to me and I might have like a personal connection with, and just, get a chance to sing and enjoy and tell some stories and have some fun.
That's cool. So just you and a guitar and a keyboard?
That's it, mate. Piano. A couple of venues we booked have grand pianos in it, which is nice. So it'll be piano nice. and guitar, and me. And it's really simple. And, in the age of touring that we're in, it's either got to be very simple or, incredibly over the top. So we're going the simple option.
In the very early 2000s, it might have even been 2000 or maybe even 1999, I went and saw Rick Price do a solo show up at Castle Hill Country Club. And it was such a random thing. I don't even know how I ended up there, but I did. And we were in this auditorium watching him do the show, and to this day, it's one of the most memorable shows I've ever seen. It was just him.
Yeah, I've seen Rick solo too. It was quite a big inspiration for me to do this tour. Me and my wife love Rick. I tried to get my wife to approve calling our youngest daughter Price after Rick, but I couldn't get that across the line. So we walked down the aisle to Rick's music. So we're a big Rick Price family.
How about that?
He's amazing. I saw him at Chapel Off Chapel, and that's if people have seen that, if I can leave people with half the impression that he left on me that day, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I was just going to say that just that environment, that solo show. I think it was just him and a guitar, and he didn't play piano. Just unbelievable. It's just gets to really showcase him, because up to that point, I'd only heard him, the pop hits that were on the radio probably 5-10 years even before that, So, man, excited for you. So how's it selling, and where are you playing?
It's, I said to my wife when we sort of were dreaming up this idea, I just said, babe, just take a risk, and what have we got to lose apart from a shitload of money? So we just thought we'd take a risk and see what the response was like. It's been wild, man. I think we're about to have like 4 shows sell out. But I think most of the tour, will probably sell out by the time the dates come along. We don't start till February, March, and it's quite spread out. I've got to fit it in amongst Jimmy and ICEHOUSE and that kind of thing. We just added 2 more shows. We're about to add a couple more. I think probably by the time this goes to air, there'll be a bunch more shows up. I'm just really thankful, mate. Very, very touched that people would, especially in this climate, spend their hard-earns to come see me squeal like a woman and sing great songs. So I'm just, I'm thankful that people would come out and, it's so hard to sell tickets in this climate, for anyone, So the fact that they would come see me is awesome.
That's great. You came onto my radar around the time of your first solo stuff, and there was that one song that you did with the Veronicas, and I remember seeing the music video on that, going, "Oh, who's this guy? He's incredible. Your voice was amazing." And then kind of I did different things, and then I would see you on stage with ICEHOUSE, and then I saw you on stage with Jimmy Barnes, and I always thought, "Oh man, what's this dude doing? He's an incredible solo artist." And we will talk a little bit more later about your early solo career and what sort of happened there and that kind of stuff. And then you sort of went off my radar anyway. And I'm sure I'm not the only one to say this, but it was just not that long ago. There was you had that viral video of you singing "Jesus Christ Superstar," Decemember, and I remember watching that. I've got goosebumps now just thinking about it. So it was, and I'm sure you've had that reaction from many people, and it seems like perfect timing for you to have kicked off, start to do this sort of the songbook tour that you're doing, based on riding off the back of that, because as they say, you're hot right now, but I know that's what the kids say. But
well, I'm not sure I'm hot, but I think that doing the show really just I guess reminded me how much I love singing, and maybe reminded me how much people enjoyed what I do, and it was lovely to feel like you were doing something that you thought was important and of value, that I'd put a lot of time and effort into, and it was great to see that received well, and that's it's a lovely feeling. So just thought while the time felt sort of right to sort of give it a shot, you know what I mean? I love singing. I love playing guitar. I love I love playing guitar with Jimmy and ICEHOUSE. They're two of the greatest bands in the world. But yeah, I love to sing, and getting the chance to sing, in more places and is just, is awesome. So I'm just sort of enjoying it while it's here, seeing what happens.
That's cool. So that kind of makes me think the way you sort of started that off there was like, it was, you did the Jesus Christ Superstar thing in those couple of videos. Or it was that one video in particular of someone sitting in the crowd filming sort of up. So up to that point, were you not really feeling the love, so to speak, or the confidence?
No, man, it's nothing like that, dude. I just went through a season where and I still don't really consider myself an artist. You know what I mean? I consider myself at the moment like a singer and a musician. I'm a songwriter and a producer. I think that being an artist is much different, writing your own music and, so I don't really feel the need to return to that part, but I just, went through a season of, starting a family and just going where the momentum was, and the momentum still is and was, being a musician, that, being asked to perform with, people like Jimmy is a huge honor. You know what I mean? It's the probably the premier gig in the country, and when it comes to sort of like rock and roll and that kind of thing. And I'm really, really, really fortunate and really lucky. So just enjoyed a whole bunch of time doing that, playing gigs and writing and producing. We've had a lot of success doing that, and hopefully, looking forward to that continuing as we move forward. And just trying to take the opportunities as they come along.
Let's roll right back to the beginning now, how it all sort of kicked off. So you're a Melbourne boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
When did you start music, and do you have a musical family, and who, if you don't have a musical family, who was it that inspired you or made you decide that you wanted to become a musician?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have professional musicians in my family, but my mum and dad are super musical. My mum's a great piano player. Dad can sing a bit. That was sort of impressed on me early, and they sort of put me into into piano lessons when I was about 5. So I learned piano for sort of 6 years until I sort of felt like I'd done as much as my lack of sight reading and my energetic young brain could handle. And then I picked up the guitar and sort of started to do that, and sort of drums and sort of singing and that kind of thing. So just, always had a love for it, mate. It's just sort of realised quite early on it was something that I was good at, and I think kids in particular, trying to find what they feel like they're good at and try to latch onto that and lean into that as early as possible. And I'm lucky I found out what that was early, and I'm even luckier that I was able to turn that into a career, because not everybody gets that opportunity.
Yeah, very good. So you had that self-awareness fairly early that you were good, and it's that's something that a lot of young sort of musos, I think, are lacking a little bit, because I think it's a different era too. Obviously, where back in that time there weren't as many sort of people with eyes on you and having the ability to jump on Instagram or wherever you are and make a negative comment or anything like that. It was sort of a little bit easier to be confident and self-assured of yourself, wasn't it?
100%, yeah. But, at the same time, I would also say it's very easy to sit in your studio under the perfect conditions, wait till you're feeling the best,
yep,
and then do 400 takes, pick your favourite one and upload it, which I still do. I do that same thing. So no judgment. But, that compared to, just relentless gigs where you're, in front of people and you've only got one chance to do it. It's just two different skills. So I think that when I was coming up, there obviously wasn't the internet like it is now. I just played in front of people wherever I could, and that breeds in you a certain skill set that probably the YouTube generation is probably a little behind on. Okay. But they have a whole bunch of other skills that we don't have. So it's just each generation's got its own sort of strengths and weaknesses.
How easy was that transition from piano to guitar?
Pretty easy. Yeah, I think that they call piano the ultimate instrument. It's kind of like my daughters. I want my daughters to be able to, use their bodies in a strong way, and they call sort of gymnastics the ultimate place to start for your body. I think piano is like that similar thing. From there, you can, you get a really good musical foundation, and you can use that to springboard into, anything else that you want, theory and ear training and sort of musical knowledge. So, so I did that. Just worked out that I started, listening to bands like Silverchair and that sort of popular music at the time was very guitar driven, not so much piano outside of maybe people like Ben Folds or the Whitlams or there wasn't any Coldplay back then. But yeah, it was just a guitar era. So I think just like every other young kid, just started to gravitate towards that because I wanted to play the things I was singing and listening to. So, yeah.
I was talking to a guy in the weekend. Now, he played piano first and then he started playing guitar. And what he found when he first picked up the guitar is he looked at the guitar and he could see the black and white notes of the piano on the guitar, So I pressed him a little bit on that, and it became about he could see almost like piano shapes but in chords, So do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, no, it's not like that for me. For me, guitar is shapes. I think I learned guitar in sort of shapes, so chord shapes, scale shapes. That's two very different parts of my brain. Whereas when I look at a piano, I'm thinking notes and more of a theoretical approach. So I don't really know why that is, but yeah, I've never really. I wish I had have done a little bit more work early on in my guitar journey to align the notes to the strings. Like there's times when most of the time when I'm playing, I couldn't tell you what note I'm playing.
Right.
I can tell you what chord I'm playing, but when I'm playing solo or something, I'm not thinking G flat, A flat, then C. I'm thinking shapes and
you're following the road. You're
following the road,
yeah.
And you do it enough, you learn your own little finger language, and when you want to make people feel a certain way with a solo, you just kind of follow. It's very flow state for me, the guitar.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think that probably happens from it not being your first instrument.
Yeah, good point. So, yeah, the change from piano and then onto guitar, and then. So were you singing early on as well?
Yeah. Yeah, well, always sung. I always worked out pretty early that you sort of work out that you can sing along with things, and you think, you can hear, because, you've learned piano since I was a kid, so you can hear when things are in tune or not. You can hear that you're in tune and you're following. I'm singing along to early days like Hanson and No Doubt and that sort of thing, and Britney Spears, and, I'd sing along to Britney Spears and I wouldn't have to sing down the octave. Obviously, I was a kid, so my balls hadn't dropped yet. But, even as I got older, I was singing along with the women, or with Farnham, or,
right,
with Rick, those sort of people. And just, when I'd sing along with other bands that were, sort of man bands, I would find myself singing up the octave or singing a high harmony, or, you just sort of learn, just it sort of appears, and my voice just kind of showed up, I guess, revealed itself pretty early on.
Did you study any sort of theory into your voice and nothing like that? It's just all been almost like your approach to guitar, right?
Yeah, I think, I had guitar lessons in high school, which was a nice foundation to learn some basics. And I found a really great teacher for maybe a year at the end of high school with guitar, just to get me out of basic land, but really most of my learning, I'd say, apart from the piano, which I had a lot of training in, has been self-taught. I had a couple of great vocal teachers along the way that sort of have imparted a couple of things here and there, but when I was younger, sort of haven't had a teacher since I was 17. So, just sort of learning by doing, and learning by making mistakes, and learning by parroting, and learning by asking questions of people that are better than you at what you do. And, just 20 years of trial and error.
Do you remember your first foray into a band? And do you remember what it was like having to work with and
I played in church when I was young, so my first performances were always part of a band. I also had a high school band that did really well for itself in the Victoria, sort of Melbourne area at the time. We did all the high school battle of the bands and all that palaver, and sort of won everything that you could win in that zone, whatever that is, I know what attracted a bit of attention, bit of local media attention and stuff. But we were a pop band in an era where, everybody else was like, quite, I guess, punkish or rockish, or, we were really pop songs. Some of our songs sounded like Farnham songs, but we were playing sort of like if Farnham wrote songs and Blink-182 played them. That's kind of what we sound, So a little bit Jimmy Eat World, I guess they came along. That was a real big influence on my early writing. I still think they're a fantastic band. But, just sort of like great emotional pop songs in a band context,
So you said you're from a church type sort of family. So you would then have those memories early on before you were playing, or even when you were starting to come up learning piano and possibly guitar, and you would have got to see, at least once a week, an actual live band playing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you remember being inspired by any particular musician? Were you looking at the guitar player or the piano player, or was it or was it vocals?
No, I mean the church that I still go to, that my parents are pastors at, it's always been a very creative church. So as I was growing up, they had a lot of working session musicians. So none of them were sort of, at the top, whatever the top is. They were just sort of local guys, but they did, 4 or 5 gigs a week, and that was their main job. And a couple of them were really good. I just remember one guy sort of sounded like Mark Knopfler. Just been pretty blown away by him. And we had one of the heads of the Navy band on the saxophone was there, and he could really sing and play, and guitar players here and there, and some drummers and stuff. So I've always been surrounded by professional musicians, and I think that's why I've always respected it, and why probably in some ways I've been far more drawn to the session scene rather than the artistry scene. Obviously got me, but I love being a session musician. I think it's a great honor. I think that and even me now, like booking band. I'm not playing with a band at the moment, but when I did go and book my own bands, who you choose to perform your music is a big thing, because you're leaving people's impression of you in the hands of other people. So Jimmy always says to us before we go on, make me sound expensive. So my job is to make him sound expensive, and just using the skill set that I've developed and that I've been, I guess, gifted. Some I've worked with hard work, some is just natural gifting, which you just have to be thankful for. But just honing that over, 20, 25 years and being able to be relied on by one of the greatest of all time, I consider that a huge honour.
Were you inquisitive during those watching those session musicians and during the church days, obviously, or these early church days, right, when you're first seeing these session players, were you the guy to go up to them and ask questions, or?
And at an annoying level, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always been a very chatty, sort of inquisitive kid. I think probably I went through a stage where I'd like everybody does, but I think mine was quite elongated, of just believing that I was the greatest to ever do it, and probably went through a stage where I was more keen to tell people how good I was rather than asking how they became so good.
Right.
But hopefully I've maturing out of that zone, But I've always. I taught myself music production by watching and looking, and when I was sent around the world by my record company at the time to sort of live and work overseas for a couple of years, I was in the best rooms in the world. This is like the top songwriters in LA and London in particular. And I would just I'd write down what compressor they were using. I'd write down what settings are you looking for. Why do you have it set like that? Why you choose that reverb? What amp simulator are you using? Where do you get your drums from? Blah blah blah. I've always been someone that has sought to learn. So I think that's probably put me in good stead.
So with that extreme self-confidence, which is great. Did you have moments where, because everybody needs to be humbled every now and then, right?
Totally.
You can't go around telling everyone that you're the best and without sort of backing it up 100% of the time. Do you have any memories of being humbled and what it was like?
Too many
and what
to
it
count,
felt
mate.
like? Okay,
Too
good.
many to count. Yeah, no, that's been the journey of my life, is the walking up the mountain of overconfidence and the humbling tumble down the other side. And hopefully the next mountain isn't quite as high, and hopefully you just climb a bit less and less high as you get older until you're finally walking on flat ground. So hopefully by the time I'm 90, I'll be nice and flat. And but we'll see. But no, I think there's been a lot of times when I've fallen flat on my face and thought, well, that was shit. So, but I think just, with anything, sometimes that's a sign that you're outside of where you should be. And sometimes it's a sign that you just made a mistake and you pick up and keep going. So I'd like to look back at my life and say that that's been a theme. It's just me not giving up. You know what I mean? I say to my girls all the time, every time, like almost every day, we'll say, "We Paynter girls," and they go, "Never give up." So if I can instill in them that they just never give up, they'll be fine.
That almost, I was going to say you could almost write a song about that, but it sounds like you have. That sounds like the premise behind Love the Fall, right? A little bit.
Yeah. I think that's what I enjoyed about being an artist, and probably what I miss about pop music now.
Right.
If I'm honest, is I think I love pop music. I've been very successful in making it in the last 10 years, which has been awesome, and without wanting to sound like just another one of those old guys that thinks music was better when you were younger, I just I miss I'm not a huge fan of I feel like pop music has got very, very internal. Well, not internal is not the word, but very narcissistic is too harsh a word, but I think that, all pop music seems to be about our feelings and, our state of mind, which is important and great, and I love it, but I always found that I had a desire to make music to communicate, sort of trying to improve people's life and living a great life, with whatever that means. So I'm looking forward to when the next person comes through who wants to sort of encourage people that way, and we'll see.
I was having a good think today before we sat down while I was at work today. I was thinking about if you were to, and we'll talk about your early solo career shortly, but just at this point, if you were to sort of go back into pop music, or even go out as a solo artist, performing your own songs, where do you think your lane would be, and who was in your lane at the moment?
When I was at pop music, there was no lane. There was the archetype, I think, of the male pop sort of guy that was kind of credible and cool. I think at the time when I came up was at a real low. So in the 80s, you probably had, countless solo artists. I'm just thinking Michael Jackson, Prince being two that come straight to mind, but I'm sure there's a million more. Huey Lewis in the News, Bruce Springsteen. The list could go on. You know my point is that the sort of the credible, making commercial music but great music. Not that pop music isn't. I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but I think you know what I'm trying to say.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
When I came up, it was in a time where solo male pop was very different. You either had your musicians, which weren't really in the pop zeitgeist. People like, say, early John Mayer. This is before Daughters, or you had Dave Matthews Band. Or you had probably, that was sort of like the solo male musician path. And then you had, in terms of pop, you had like Enrique Iglesias, Justin Timberlake, maybe very early Bruno Mars, but you had like Usher, you know what I mean? That was very urban R&B, glitzy digital pop, or it was musician band. There wasn't that, you didn't have your Benson Boone, you didn't have your Dean Lewis, you didn't have Ed Sheeran, you didn't have Justin Bieber even, you didn't have, Zayn, you didn't have, Zayn hasn't put anything out for 10 years, so I'm showing my age there, but there's a path now to be a solo male that can sort of, do the Harry Styles thing of being cool, but being super pop, but also being interesting and cool, and that's awesome. So I think that if I just came up in a strange time where I think that the label and my management and even my own brain in a way didn't really know what to do with me. So I didn't really know where I fit. I had a voice sort of like, I guess, a high male, pretty soaring voice, like, maybe one of those 80s sort of rock singers. But, I played guitar and piano and sort of a little bit Coldplay in there. There's a little bit, I was very influenced by English music. So, people like Block Party, and people like, there's a band called the Future Heads, which are from Glasgow, which are a huge influence on me. I loved that sort of really angular British music. Influenced by Farnham, obviously the GOAT. People like, then there was some sort of like Christian adjacent music, like there's a band called Switchfoot, which I always loved. So like, and that was quite, that was the music I really loved. So, but it just didn't really fit anywhere, which is, I think, why early days, people that came to see me, my fans that came to the shows, they got it because they just like to hear me sing and hear the songs. But I think in terms of selling it, it was just like, what do we do with this, So, but I think it was also in the time where iTunes had just come out, and it was just at the end of Napster, and it was a very weird time for the music industry, as well as the global financial crisis. Actually, now that I'm an old man thinking about such things, looking back, I can see how that sort of played a big, sort of that 2008 era and 2009 era would have been a wild time to have been trying to invest money in the music industry.
I draw a comparison, not career. Well, you sort of not really career wise. It's sort of it's different. But what you're saying about you're the guy with the voice, and it's about a voice and a band, right? Not so much solo. The comparison there I'm thinking of is Paramore, right, with Hayley Williams. Same sort of deal. Like people say, well, it's Paramore, but. And
you either went into a band. If she was early days of Paramore, they were quite trailblazers for that. But, like early days, if they had been a bit earlier, she would have either had to have gone and done the Avril Lavigne thing and been the sort of solo pop chick, or she did what she did and she became part of a band. So, yeah, that was an option that a lot of, that lot of dudes took back then. And but yeah, I just always just did the solo thing. So yeah, been interesting.
And it's interesting. I don't know if you know much about Halsey's career, but she had huge, massive pop success, and this is not that long ago. And then she's tried to switch it to a more sort of alternative, darker sound, but her record company is still expecting her to be. And this is from an interview that I saw her on. She was on.
I watched the same interview.
Zane Rowe, yeah. And that was deep. That got the hairs on my neck standing up. Like,
it's Taylor's oldest time, mate. It's no difference. Once it's a business. So once somebody knows they can make money off something, they want more of it. So.
Are you happy to talk about what happened with your solo career and?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a million years ago, but yeah, go for it.
Well, I mean, this sort of gets to where we are today, right? So, yeah, tell me how you first got signed, and then that sort of journey.
I was signed. There was an A&R representative from Sony Australia that came and saw me. I won a few singing competitions around the country. That just sort of put me on a few management radars, a few people's radar approached me, and just sort of a young kid at the time. There wasn't many people doing what I was doing. So, and Melbourne is quite small, so word travels pretty fast, and you just sing somewhere, and someone's uncle knows someone, and through a few different avenues, I got in touch with got onto the page of this guy from Sony. He's a guy named Adam Gould, who's not there anymore, but he's a fantastic man, and was a great A&R. And he came and saw me at a gig, and then signed me to an absolutely defunct dinosaur deal now, which they used to call a development deal, which is they'd give you a little bit of money and they'd give you a certain amount of time, and they'd say sort of come back in 6 months with 5 songs, and over that 6 months they would develop you by paying for your studio time and sort of using their connections to put you in rooms with writers and producers that could help you blossom, which they did. Funnily enough, from day one, Dennis Hanlon was always a massive fan of mine. And I mean, whatever you think about that man and his legacy, when Dennis was in your corner, you were untouchable. You think of people like Delta Goodrem is the first person that comes to mind. He just absolutely adores Delta and used all his power and might and that company to get her music out to the people and to sort of support her. And so yeah, I had Dennis. Dennis was a behind me from very early days. And yeah, I just signed that development deal and wrote with a couple of people in Melbourne and a couple of people in Sydney, and came back with some songs, and they loved it so much they signed me to a deal and went and made a record in America. Well, they sent me around riding around the world for about 18 months. So I'd say I lived pretty much overseas, a little bit on, a little bit off, but it was the better part of 18 months I lived in America and London working. And yeah, came back with 30, 40 songs, and then we picked from the best of that and put together a record.
So those 30, 40 songs, so were they all, so this was a time when you were writing songs, right? Mm-hmm. So, and this is part of what the funk sort of the development deal.
No, this was just once they'd already worked out from the development deal that I could write songs, and they thought that there was something in there. They put their money where their mouth is, and they came up with a budget, and we worked towards a deal.
Okay, so you've come back with 30, 40 songs. Mm-hmm. So are they songs that were given to you by the record company? We hear of artists that get given a bunch of songs to add to their album. They get to change them a little bit, or this is all your stuff? I've
always written everything I did. Always found that super important. I was never offered songs. I wish I did, to be honest. I would have loved to have taken one, but no, I've always been a musician and a songwriter, and that's always been part of what I do. So I think that especially those initial bunch, I think probably the reason why I didn't get the hit that they wanted was because I didn't let enough input from those people in. I sort of went in with a song that was maybe already mostly written, or I just had this young, determined view of what I thought I wanted, which is great, but I would love to do that again and listen a bit more. I'd love to go back to my 19-year-old self and just say what I say to my daughter, which is 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah.
Use them accordingly. So yeah, we came up with, sort of got that down to 10 songs, and then we found a producer and we went over to America and recorded in the famous Sound City Studios, which is
Awesome.
the one from the documentary and all that.
Yep.
And had some great players on it and put it together. It was a really great producer that worked on it, and then released a couple of singles which did pretty well, a couple of top 20 singles, I think, from memory. But album didn't come out. As I said, it was a weird time, and it was. I really don't blame them. If I was a record label, now being a producer and spending a lot of time on the other side of the equation as opposed to just being an artist, I can definitely understand how they would have been confused. And then we just sort of went to ground for a bit, and we decided to. Me and my manager at the time decided to sort of take matters into our own hands, and we recorded an acoustic album where I did some of my songs that didn't make the record, and some early songs that I'd written, and some covers, and just did an acoustic record, which was received really well, and that sort of reminded the record label, I think, of what I could do. And then they said, and then I got asked, the big turning point for me was a friend of mine who's actually the ICEHOUSE tour manager, who's still a great friend of mine to this day. I see you're an All Black, so I can assume that you like cricket, although you must be I'm sucker for punishment if you like cricket, being an All Black fan. But
yeah, I mean, we Black Caps have our moments. But
this guy, I go to the cricket with this guy on the Boxing Day Test still to this day every year. So he's still a great friend of mine. But he was putting together a benefit concert at the Rod Laver Arena for the bushfires, the Black Saturday bushfires, and they needed somebody to sing a song with the MSO, and he got me up to sing a song for that, which sort of the Prime Minister, and there's I think Queen Margaret might have been there in the front row. All the dignitaries, and it was, received really well. And then I think that just sort of Dennis said, all right, well, we should give this another shot. So he pumped a whole bunch of more money into me and sent me overseas again. This time we were a little bit smarter with who we work with. And I think that time around I definitely collaborated a lot more and listened a lot more, which is why I probably came back with better songs. That's when we wrote Are You Alive and Love the Fall with a guy who's probably been my greatest mentor, a guy called Gary Clark, who is the lead singer of a Scottish band called Danny Wilson. They had a massive hit in the 80s called Mary's Prayer. You might know that, but he's a fantastic singer, fantastic songwriter. He did a lot of the Natalie Imbruglia stuff, did a lot of pop work in England. He actually is the writer and the producer on that show, the stage show Sing Street, if you've seen that. He's the brains behind that. So we wrote Love the Fall and Are You Alive and a bunch of others on that trip, and we came back and we had the songs. So once we had the songs, I was sort of living with Lisa and Jess, the Veronicas, on and off in LA, which is how I got to stay there so long. I just had friends and they gave me couches. And I just asked them whether they'd be interested in jumping onto the song. And they said yes, which was great. And the rest is very brief, very ancient history.
Okay, so let's dig into the brief ancient history part of it then. So that second album gets done, right? So was it not received well, or was this going back to you talked about it was just in a bad time and the second album was the Love the Fall era was received very well. That was the most played song on Australian radio for about 18 months. Right.
That did really well. That was really there was a point there where it was wild. It was the biggest song in the country. So that was but it wasn't because of me. It was because the Veronicas were on it. You know what I mean? They had at that point they were in a really lean part of their release schedule. This was about 10 years after Untouched came out. So they were in a sort of a quieter period. So having them on the song was novel, and I think that's what opened the doors for, radio stations to play it, because they thought they were playing the Veronicas, which they were, and people loved it. So I'm very, very eternally thankful to them for that leg up. And obviously they were in the music video as well, which was, we shot that in America, and that was, wild. So that was when we entered the zone where we just got the full gamut of the Sony machine behind us. This is also pre-reality shows, so they sort of, they were pumping money into sort of developing pop acts and stuff before they just let the TV do it. So
okay, so what happened after that? Because you got dropped from your label?
I didn't get dropped. No, we released Love the Fall, and then it just went a bit quiet. Again, it was 2010. It was a very weird time. But yeah, the label was very quiet. I think I think Love the Fall did so well, they were just sort of happy to sort of let it continue. Maybe we all got a bit complacent, because it lasted so long and there were so many opportunities. I went to sing in Afghanistan for the the army over there. So it was just a lot of things happening. And looking back, we should have definitely been a lot quicker on the follow up. But the follow up single we released, they didn't release. They didn't want to make a video for it. They didn't. There was just a radio silence. They were a bit busy with other things. This was around the time at the start of the X Factor returning and stuff like that. So I think they had people coming through where they were like, hang on, we spent hundreds and thousands of dollars on this guy, or we can just start afresh with this, early group of gorgeous, talented kids that there's 3, 4, 5 million people watching them every night, baked in ticket sales, baked in sales. Again, totally understand it. So yeah, that happened, and then the song that I wrote called "Are You Alive," that we entered that into the international songwriting competition, and that won the best song in the world, whatever they call that, the top. I can't remember what the category was, but it won something there. And then we sort of went into the label and said, look, you've got great songs here. Why are we not releasing them? And they said, look, if you don't feel like this is a good fit, then we would love to go. And they said, you can go. And they let me walk with all my masters, all my videos, everything. It wasn't acrimonious at all. It wasn't like, we're dropping you. It was really just my manager going in and saying, if you don't want to release it, fair enough, but at least let us go so that we can release it ourselves. And, and I think they, thanks to them, they let us do that. And that gave us, we moved on.
That's rare, isn't it? That
very.
I haven't heard that very much at all.
Very rare. I think, and as I said, I'm thankful to them for doing that. So.
All right. So you get to walk away with all your stuff, which is fantastic. Don't hear of that. So what was next?
I'm trying to think back. That's when I started my production company.
Okay.
And I started M Squared in about 2010, 2011. And then that sort of started up until this year, 15 years of full-time writing and producing. And, so we sort of set about, I had a bit of attention from particularly local other solo guys that liked what I did, because obviously I said there wasn't many of me. So I think that if you played guitar and sung and wanted to sing pop songs as a solo guy, you probably would have seen what I did at the time and want to try and follow in those footsteps, whatever they were. So I had a lot of sort of friends and people around that wanted me to help make their music. So I just sort of got into writing and production, and I met the other Michael De Laurentiis, and we started M Squared. And we did that for 15 years. And I think over that time, The Voice came up as a possibility in about 2013. So it was a couple of years later. So I did that just sort of thinking, because I'd taken all the songs from the Love the Fall era and I'd recorded a whole bunch more. and I had like an album. So we just thought, look, this was the second year of it, so it was still quite big and it meant something, I think, back then. But even then we knew that it didn't mean anything. And so we thought, look, worst case scenario, it give us a reason to release the album, which it did. So we did The Voice, and then we released that album and toured it, which was great. And then from that, I sort of connected again with the Veronicas and joined their gang and was their music director for about 8 years.
Right. So, and were you involved in any sort of songwriting stuff, or was it just purely the live stuff?
A little bit here and there, but I was mainly their live guy. That was where my heart was and still is. So I just run the band.
Playing keys or guitar?
Both.
Both? Okay.
Yeah, both. And a lot of singing too. But no, I would just run the band, put the band together, because they had an American band. So me, along with one of the Sony guys that was working with them at the time, we found a band together, and I sort of produced that up and rehearsed it. And, I would go to sound checks and make sure everything sounded good, so they didn't have to. So they would just sort of rock up and check 1 or 2 and they could go off. They didn't have to be standing on stage for, hours getting all that stuff right. So we did that. It was an amazing time, toured the world a couple of times, and that was incredibly fun, which led to, at the same time doing ICEHOUSE, which sort of led to Jimmy, and, I played with Bachelor Girl, played with Delta around that time as well, because her band was the Voice band at the time. So when The Voice was on, she needed people to sort of jump in and play with her, which that was a huge honour. She's amazing. A couple of tours like with people like Reese Maston and that kind of thing. All these people are still my great friends to this day. So I'm, really thankful. And yeah, that's sort of what the last 10, 15 years has been, just playing sessions and sort of on the computer writing songs and producing music during the day, and on a plane playing a gig on the weekends at night.
Once you came back and started the production company, did you have a mindset of like, I'm kind of over this solo thing? I want to go into. I want to, like you mentioned, you love being the session guy, right?
Yeah.
So it just takes you away from all that stuff.
I still feel like that. Yeah, I've no desire to be an artist, as I said earlier. Again, I'm just enjoying singing and playing, and just taking whatever opportunities come my way. I think it's an era where you can sort of do anything and be anything at the moment. You're not really locked into anything. You can sort of anything that you feel like you want to try. You can probably find an audience for it thanks to the internet. So I just really love being a session guy. Probably harks back to all those dudes I was hanging out with early days, and feeling like I was in a great spot, and I still count it the greatest job in the world. I love it.
How did you get the ICEHOUSE gig?
My early manager is the guitar player. So they came back out of hiatus. They had a 20-year live hiatus, and they wanted to go on the road again. And they wanted to take a whole bunch of things off backing track and play it live. So I was kind of the Swiss Army knife that they popped in there to play some keys and some extra guitar parts, and also sing a couple of songs to give the boss a break, which turned into Touch the Fire and Man of Colours and My Obsession and a few others over the years. Yeah.
Awesome. So how long's that been going for? How long have you
2011.
been? Wow, awesome.
15 years. About the same time as I started M Squared, very early days.
Okay. And you're in Jimmy Barnes's band now, which we've spoken about. So when did that start, and how did that come about?
That I've known Jimmy since I was very young, very, very young. I started playing, my first session gig was playing for Michael Gudinski's daughter, who was an artist at the time. And I was studying law, and he approached me to play for Kate and said, do you want to do, 80 hours of study a week or play in a pop band? And I said, let me think about that for a second, and then left the law degree quick smart, went on the road. And then we were on the road with Kate, and one night we went over to Jimmy's house and for dinner, and sort of connected with him and his family, in particular his son. Jackie, who still plays drums in the band, who's a great friend of mine to this day.
He's been on the show a couple of times, so yeah, no. Jackie.
Yes, yeah. So he sort of he's always been a really great friend of mine, and I think he's always been supportive from a distance and a really good friend. And then as COVID sort of, we were all coming out of COVID, Mahalia, his eldest daughter, called me and said, told me that she would I be interested in coming in the band and sort of doing sort of her role. So she is the screamy high singer. So I said, I think I can do that. So I came in and that sort of became playing guitar and all those sort of things, and it's sort of been coming up 5 years now of an absolute wild ride in that band.
He just keeps reinventing himself every year, or even he'll finish one cycle of something and there's already something new coming, which is, keeps everybody on the road, which is,
man.
I think it's great. It's awesome to see, him support, that whole sort of family supporting, the guys like yourself.
Yep. Yeah, no, he's an amazing human being. The Jimmy that you see on TV is the Jimmy we all see around the kitchen table. So he's a man of huge integrity and consistency and passion. He's a really passionate guy, which is very inspiring to be around.
Were you involved at all with any of the Cold Chisel stuff?
No, I was actually doing Jesus Christ Superstar when that tour was on, so I wasn't able to even go to any of the shows, unfortunately. So,
all right, well let's talk about Jesus Christ Superstar and how that fell into your lap, because you haven't done theatre before, have you?
No.
You haven't really seen yourself as a theatre. What do you say, musician or theatre artist or
thespian?
Yeah.
Yes, no.
There you go.
No, mate, definitely not. No, I've always run the other direction from the old theatre, so it was a big a surprise to me as it was to anybody else.
All right, so how did it happen?
Mahalia Barnes got cast as Mary, and she called me up and said, somebody's going to call you in the morning, just whatever they say yes. And so she still is my boss and definitely was the boss back then, so you don't say no to Mahalia, so I just said yes. And that was, the producers of the show wanted me to come in and have a chat, and so I did. And then they got cast, and all of a sudden I'm doing 8 shows a week for a year. So it was wild.
Yeah, just going back to that performance of Gethsemane. So I find it incredible that you're able to back up. Well, tell me before I finish the rest of that question. How many songs are you singing in a night? Or how many songs were you singing in a night for one Jesus Christ Superstar show?
There's not a lot of singing for Jesus in that show. There's probably cumulatively maybe 20 minutes of singing, I'd say, in the whole thing. Sort of bits and pieces. Gethsemane is really the only full-on song that you sing on your own.
Oh, right, okay.
But it's a big sing, But yeah, so I'm just lucky that I'm in a season of my life where I'm healthy and my voice is showing up when I need it, So from a sort of singing point of view, it wasn't overly difficult. It was more the mental and physical side, I think, of that. Just sort of because I was working full time, so producing during the day, and I was producing 9 till 5, and then having a quick shower, eating some food, and going to do that show. So it was just it was 7 days a week for a year, and it was I'm still recovering from it now.
So going back to that viral performance of Gethsemane, so I sit there and I listen to it, and to me it sounds like a flawless performance, right? You've obviously seen it, and do you have your own sort of internal benchmark of what you need to hit to sing that song the same or better? Are you trying to better yourself every time you sing that song?
I'm always trying to bet. Yeah, I'm always trying to better myself. Yeah.
And how does that version that we've seen compare to your sort of benchmark? Is that one of the better performances?
Mate, to be honest, I've done it 350 times, so I couldn't tell you which night that was, and they've all just become a blur. You know? But there's no clams in that version. Put it that way. So
okay, gotcha.
That's a good thing that at least the one that they uploaded seemed like it was a pretty good representation of what I did. You know, some nights were definitely better, some nights were definitely worse. So, but yeah, no, I think the part of being a professional really, especially as you get on, is just never dipping below 80%, you know, and the best of the best, I think their 80% is everybody else's 99%, you know what I mean? So it's keeping some in the tank and just, you know, making sure that you hold yourself to a standard where you don't drop below a certain, you know, amount every show. You know,
how far into the run did you have that sort of epiphany, if I can call it?
Oh no, that's something I've lived by my whole life. Yeah, always. So I can't remember who told me that, but that was early days of even being an artist. You know, every gig, you know, touring. You know, I did a lot of tours as a solo artist too, and there's some nights where you just don't feel great. You know, and especially when you know what the sort of the heights that you can hit and the quality that you can do, you sometimes get a bit bummed that you can't hit your 95%. You just got to know that just hit your 80, you know, and some nights you just have to be happy with that, you know, but just never drop below 80.
Now that show's done, do you think you'll go back into theatre again?
I have no idea. I think it would depend on the show and the people that are running it, and you know, a lot of sort of things like the family, how they're doing, and probably end up in divorce court if I did another show straight away, being away for a whole nother 14 months. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to, at the moment, just sort of getting stuck into this tour, you know, which is sort of very sporadic. It's not a consistent tour, and yeah, continuing to write and produce next year, and sort of you know, spending more time with the family and yeah, see what happens. But if the right thing came along, I'm definitely, you know, I live my life with a pretty open hand, so I'm open to anything.
Awesome, man. Well, Mike, this has been cool, man. I appreciate you sitting with me today and probably answering questions you've heard plenty of times.
Not for a long time. It's been a long time since I went that deep back into memory lane, mate. So
okay, cool,
you know,
cool.
It's it was fun. Some good memories.
Awesome, man. So yep, wishing you, well, it's for the listeners it's January, but to us it's the 19th of December. I wish you all the best, you and your family, for
thank you, mate.
Christmas and all that, man. And yep, no worries. And yeah, I'll be making it my mission to get out to one of your shows.
Appreciate it, mate. So. We'll see you out there on the road.
Sweet as, Mike. Take it easy, bud.
See you, mate.
See you, man. Bye.